Hi there everyone, and welcome back to yet another video on the Project Corner. Today what I'm going to do is I'm going to share 3 new features that were recently added to Microsoft Project. Now these features are Agile features, so they're all focused on boards, sprints, user stories, all that kind of stuff. Now please keep in mind this is only available on the subscription-based version of Microsoft Project. So in order to find out if you are on a subscription based, let's head on over to File and then head over to Account. And here you will see that we are on a subscription product. And the features that I'm going to show today are quite recently added. And that might mean that it's only available on the Office Insider version of the subscription-based product. Now I've done a previous video describing how to get onto the Office Insiders group, but if you navigate to the About Project section, you will see if you are on the Office Insider group as well as I currently am. Now the version that I'm currently working with is 1904, and that version has a number of features that I would like to show to you today. Now the first thing that I want to show to you is better navigation, because there were a couple of questions about how to navigate through the different sprints, and if you are on a current sprint or if you are on a future sprint, you might not know if that is the case. So what Microsoft did is they created a new view called the current sprint board and the current sprint sheet. This has also been included, where the current sprint, taking the date of today, and if that is within the sprint dates start and finish, it will show that the current sprint is sprint 1. So if we go to the current sprint board, we will be presented by a nice title telling us that we are currently in sprint 1, and sprint 1 is in the end of March and the beginning of April. Now, how long is a sprint? You can find that in the manage menu. And if I click on that, you will see that all sprints currently take 2 weeks, which is the default setting that Microsoft starts off with. And I can of course add new sprints if I like. These sprints will start when the last sprint has finished and will continue on for 2 weeks. So let's click on close, and now if I look at the sprint planning board, I would see that there are a couple more sprints that I currently have added. So that is a very nice little feature that makes it easier to navigate in making you aware of in which sprint are you currently acting on. So the second thing that I wanted to share with you is a better board functionality. And this can be found in the task board or in the backlog board if you still have that. So the task board currently has new features where it has a set percentage complete functionality. Now for done, it's already set to 100%, and for in progress you can actually set your own value. And because sprints take 2 weeks, it might be interesting to set this to 50% complete, and up next might be indicating that you already did some pre-analysis, so let's set that to 5%. And I might need to have an additional column here, let's call that test, and let's set that to 75%. Ready to test. And I'll set that to 75%, and I'll move this one to the left. There's no dragging and dropping like we have with the cards, but if you right click on one of the columns, you can move them to left, to right, and you can delete or rename columns. So this is very interesting, where you have the percentages complete, and let's create a dummy task and see how that dummy task holds up Currently, let's navigate to the Gantt chart and see that dummy task. Here it is. And let's have that percentage complete here as well. So percentage complete. Well, currently everything is at 0%, which is correct. And this dummy task, we're now going to scroll that through the different settings where the dummy task now is up next. Let's see if that changed anything in the Gantt chart. And yes, it did. So here it is, 5% complete, which is very nice. And why is this very nice? Because this can be used in reports. Where we used to have reports, Gantt chart reports or sprint board reports that wouldn't show any percentage complete because that wasn't in there. Or you couldn't add that from a board's point of view. Now let's move that one to the in progress, where the change would be to 50%. And let's navigate to the Gantt chart and see if that change happened. And yes, it is changed to 50%. So that is great. And let's have two final situations here. So let's set it to done. And what is added now is a nice check mark here. So this activity is now completed. And you can even see that in the customized cards, and I'll come back to this later in the video. Show checkmark when percent complete is 100%. Let's make something clear. These percentage complete are a one-way ticket. If we have a dummy task, for instance, in the 5% complete situation, and we head on over to our Gantt chart, and we manually change this to 50%, we might think that this is now an activity that shows up in the in progress, but that is not the case. It is still in the 5% section. Because what Microsoft thinks here, and what I totally agree on, is that when you work with task boards, you will update it here. And there's no need to have a Gantt chart view that will update things. Now, one of the things that might be in contrast here is where you have a server situation and people update their timesheets. You might want to have that reflected here as well, and that won't reflect in the current situation. So if we head back to the Gantt chart, that actually didn't break anything of the functionality coming from the boards, but it's not coming from the Gantt chart to the boards, it's coming from the boards to the Gantt chart. So let's head back over to our task board, and this dummy task is now completed. Now, another thing on the board that I'm very interested about is the ability to add filters. There's an option to filter on two things. You can filter on the summary tasks and on the resources now. This is very cool because what I actually did is I used my summary tasks within the Gantt chart as being my user stories. So I have different user stories too in the current situation, and I use that user story to gather my activities. So I can now focus on only the user story 1. And these activities are part of the board at the moment. And if I look at user story 2, I'll see these activities here. Now, another thing I can do, I can clear this summary task and I will see everything again. And I can head on over to the resource filtering. So now it is possible to have a specific board for a specific person. Very useful for when you're doing sprint planning or when you're doing your daily stand-up, and you can say, okay, well, Hank, what's up for you? Well, currently there's nothing started yet, so there's something that you can start up. One thing to take note of, it is a multi-select situation that's going on here. Make sure if you have Dave selected and you want to see Hank, you deselect Dave as well. So now you can say, okay, well, Hank is doing something, pretty soon, and he might have 30 story points here, and that's about it what he's doing. Let's have Dave do something as well, where I would say he does something with 20 story points as well. So there we go. That brings us to the third feature that I would like to share with you, and that is an improvement on the card base. And the card base that is improved is related to what is shown on the cards. Now, story points wasn't there originally. Originally, you would have the task name and you would have the resources here, and that would be it. But now you have an added value with the task board tools, and there's two new items here, where one of them is show the percent complete mapping, which is the one that we briefly discussed previously. And then there's the customize cards. And this lets you customize what is shown on these cards. And that's very cool, because now you have the option to add up to 5 fields onto one of the cards. Now, currently I have these story points, and I also want to have the user stories, which is another custom field that I created. And I can add that to the card, and now it will show up telling me that, well, Dave is actually doing something for user story 2, user story 1. And I might want to focus on the things with user story 1 on top, because I think that should have priority. And I also can see that they are both around the 30 to 40 story points per person, which is quite nice for a relative sprint, right? So let's head on over to the sprint planning board, and let's see what's happening here. So here we now see that that the sprints and the user stories, and we're doing user stories 1 in sprint 1, and a couple of things of user stories 2 in sprint 2 and 3. And we also have creating the quick reference card for the processes of story 1 in here. And we see that around the 40 to 50 story points are done each sprint. And I see that Hank isn't doing anything in this story point, in this sprint. So I can maybe add Hank here as well, so that he doesn't do nothing at all. And I can create, I need to have this one here, and this needs to happen here. I might have Hank here as well. So I really like the way you can navigate the sprints and the cards within the board views. It's a very fluent way of working. These are 3 features that I wanted to share with you that have come to Microsoft Project, and specifically the Project Online Desktop Client. You should see these coming to your version of Microsoft Project if you have the version 1904 and up. And I'm looking forward to what the Microsoft group is going to go for next, because they're doing a good thing with the Agile. So if you like this kind of video, please give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. I will do more videos each 2 weeks. And with that, thank you for watching, and until next time.